Welcome back, everybody. I'm Sean Floch. I'm here with Scotty Hagness. This is Fitness, Wellness, and Longevity Podcast. Scott, how goes it?
It's going good, going good.
Awesome. The obligatory introduction includes please subscribe, give us a comment, share us if you like this podcast. We're trying to do our best to grow this podcast, and it takes the help of our listeners. Scott, how's it going, man? We're in December now. What does that mean for the Portland weather?
It's a little frosty out there, but we're having a dry winter, so it's supposed to be dry all week. So just hope that wind doesn't start howling.
That doesn't sound too bad. Here it is 85 degrees and sunny. Yeah, okay.
I won't
go
into
too
much
about
ready
there,
for
Scott. You won't be a pity party anytime soon.
Yeah, I imagine most folks are probably like, yeah.
Yeah, right.
Well, I heard it was pretty warm in the Northeast yesterday. So.
Yeah, you know what? Actually, I just got off the phone with my pop, and he said it was like 50 today, which is in December is not the worst thing in the world, right?
Yeah.
So I this last weekend was the first of hopefully many Floch Fitness Fix Your Squat, Deadlift, and Press workshop. So I had, I think, like 8 paid attendees, and then I think 3 scholarships. So 11 people there. Awesome. I had such a blast. Nice. It was supposed to be about a 2-hour deal. Ended up being like 2.5. We definitely could have gone like to 3. But I think in the future, it'll probably be a 3-hour tour. And it was just awesome. I think everybody got at least a little something out of it. We kind of started it off right away of just taking a look at what everybody's front squat, deadlift, and press look like with light weight. And then we went into just basic theory of breathing. And then we showed what good breathing looks like. I had Ian Kaplan, who's a buddy of mine, to help me out kind of like with the particular movements that I'm not the greatest at. So that was definitely helpful. And then we went into just like basic breathing exercises, 90-90s, lazy bear. I think we did also a 90-90 with overhead reach. The thing I definitely would incorporate in the future is a wall squat, just so we can get some kind of standing exercise to start transitioning from what we learn on the floor to what we learn standing, knowing that it's not going to be perfect.
Yeah. Yeah, I do like that as a good transition piece.
But it's awesome that when I do something like this, I also learn things through it. So one of the things that I learned as I was teaching was that like muted hip. So almost like, I know I'm showing this for the viewers, but like imagine like someone who looks like their upper back is curved, but their hips are, they look extended. They're like forward. So it's almost like they're moving their butt forward.
Yeah, kind of like a sort of a sway back.
Yes, yes.
In early CrossFit years, that was one thing they would really point out as like, say, a squat, a flaw in, say, push press mechanics, for example.
Yep.
The
hip shifting forward, right? And like the knees driving forward.
Yeah.
So as I'm trying to teach someone how to tuck their hips, that type of individual, they'll never be able to from that position. So you actually have to pull them back, get their hips going back first, and then allow them to tuck, and then almost bring them into more of an upright position. And that's what allows them to basically shift their center of mass, which is their hips, back. So that they can actually get it over their heels and feel the engagement of their glutes, feel the engagement of their quads a little bit, and let go of spinal erectors, psoas, calves, basically. And once we got that, everything started getting into place. So I was doing that myself.
Nice, yeah.
I was doing that myself as well, like just kind of testing it out afterward and then in training and that kind of stuff. And it feels a lot better. And you start to understand that like a standing position is actually with your knees slightly flexed. And your butt is pretty much over your heel or behind your heel. So that lower body component, definitely some eye-opening things as I instruct and teach, even though I've done this for a very long time. Just giving the ability to do this little workshop helped tremendously.
Yeah, it's always great. And you always come away with some learnings yourself. And the more people you get your hands on, the more things you see, right?
Absolutely. The thing that
that's awesome.
The other thing that really hit home for a lot of the people was that, like, the concept of why you're feeling like why you move this way in the first place. So it's like there's nothing wrong with you. You're just a product of what you've been doing. So like if you're very specific in your profession where you're driving in a car all day or sitting at a desk, if you're, standing all day but you're standing in a way where you're overextended and you're, arching your back or whatever it might be, if you've been doing that for a prolonged amount of time, you'll be in a little bit more of a locked state. So it's going to take some time for you to kind of unlock yourself and be mindful of that. And when someone said like, how long does this take to change? I'm like, well, how long did it take for you to get there? But the thing that we're giving them is the idea that like you are now aware. So you can take it anywhere you want. If you want to do it all the time, then you can do it all the time. Is it going to take more of your awareness to do it? Yes. But realistically, that's going to be, probably impossible for most people. So you just gotta be like, you know what? I want to be able to do this so I can be pain-free in squatting or pressing or whatever it might be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, get the awareness. Some people will really go to town on it. Others, it'll be less frequent. But so your speed of change will be kind of, parallel what you've chosen to do.
Yes.
But it's always going to be a long process. It's like making any meaningful adaptation or change in the body, right?
Yeah. And then your training has to kind of coincide with that. So if you are practicing things like squats and deadlifts and presses, either doing some kind of prep with the concepts that we covered, or your actual workout is those exercises for a prolonged amount of time until you can actually feel what we're trying to get down. But it's pretty apparent also. I put up a video yesterday highlighting some lacrosse stuff, but just looking at my lacrosse players, how they move. And you have kids who are very high performers, but as we said before, the highest performers tend to be sometimes the biggest compensators. And they figured out a very, very, very effective way of doing the task with their shitty movement. And, then the question becomes, it's like, well, what if we improve their movement? Is that going to take away from their performance? Is it going to improve their performance? I haven't seen a person where I've like, okay, try this, and it messed them up completely. It's usually like, oh, wow, that feels a lot better. It feels, doing it this way, now I feel a lot less strain on my back. I'm like, did you feel strain in your back before? Well, I didn't know that I was training my back.
Yeah. You wouldn't necessarily think about it. Yeah. Their bodies should kind of self-organize and figure out a technique using the better mechanics once available.
Absolutely. So I think my plan in the future is, the good, the bad, the ugly during this workshop. And I only share this because, it helps me kind of organize my thoughts and also for just to throw it out there for you to kind of help in any way that you can. But so the few things, one, make it a little longer. Yeah, add that squat in. I would have done like a hip extension test prior to doing the 90-90 so that they can see that, okay, after you do a 90-90 and get your ribs in the proper position and hips in the proper position, you can extend your hips a little better. We did it after, but it's kind of being that before and after kind of thing. So show hip extension, show the 90-90, retest hip extension. For the external rotation, we just did a basic external rotation test, and then we did the lazy bear, and then we retested external rotation because to show that as we get air in that posterior thorax, we drive external rotation of the shoulder. And then we did a flexion test just because I feel that that's a little bit more toward what most of these individuals want to do eventually. So we did a shoulder flexion test, and then we did a hook lying hip tilt with overhead reach, and then retested the shoulder flexion. So those were like the three exercises that we did, and then retested them. I would add a wall squat, but let me ask you this, Scott. If I want to be able to use the wall squat, what would be an exercise that would be a good retest to see if the wall squat actually does anything for you?
Yeah, I mean, that one will often help clear up hinging and squatting mechanics. But as far as like a range of motion, assessment, probably the one you would see, it would be a hip extension test. Maybe it would be the
or maybe even because it's standing, maybe like a toe touch, like you said, like a hinge.
A toe touch could, yeah.
Yeah. just because it's a little bit more one dimensional, you know? So, just allowing them to understand hips back.
Yeah. Yeah, I bet that would work. I'll experiment with it here on this end with folks a little bit, and we'll see if that one's particularly effective in that regard. I would think it would be.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then overall, I think in the future, what I would love to do, or so that was like kind of like the things I would change. The good, people seemed engaged the entire time, which was great. They seemed like they were actually doing something. So like the practical part of it or lecture part of it really wasn't all that much. It was just like showing a video of what good reading is. But I think also maybe having like the actual diagram of like a skeleton, using a real skeleton might be a little bit easier. But that being said, I don't know how far we have to go with just the recreational athlete. I think maybe for coaches and trainers and stuff like that, you might want to get a little bit more of a deep dive, Zach Couple style. But I'd want to kind of stay away from that a little bit just because I'm like, I'm not a clinician. So I'm just going to teach you what works in the gym. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that might be a little more information than they need, though you're absolutely right. If you're trying to teach a coach, some of that is really difficult to visualize without at least part of a skeleton.
Yes, exactly. And then I would love to in the future be able to do an AM, PM, where the AM is basically the workshop, and then like a break, an hour and a half break, and then the PM would be a technical component where we would do, like if you wanted it was a gymnastics biased, like fix your pull up seminar. You would then relearn how to do kipping pull ups or muscle ups or whatever, or an Olympic lifting, biased one, or running. Like I could see this for a lot of different stuff, and how you would apply these concepts toward those different modalities.
Yeah, that sounds nice. Yeah, that would be great, kind of a full day.
Yeah, and be able to get some really good stuff, but not in the way that some seminars go, where it's like you're going to do 1,000,000 reps. It's like I don't think that's how we learn. Like we see what we need to work on, and then you let it go for a little bit. You pick it up, you put it down, you pick it up, you put it down, you play with it, and then you just keep doing that over a prolonged amount of time in short bursts. So like this is your little crash course. You're going to learn what you need to do on a consistent basis. Then you need to go do it on a consistent basis.
Yeah. Yeah, that's generally the better way to pick up a skill rather than beating it to death. Yeah.
Yeah.
Certainly.
Yeah. Do it for 3 days straight, or do it for 30 minutes a day, every other day for an entire month.
Yeah. You'd say part 2 is going to certainly be much more effective.
And Scott, you've kind of brought that up before. Is there any kind of science behind how that works? Like in terms of like that, the more touches you get rather than just trying to do 1,000,000 hours at once?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of motor learning research, and that's been an area I really wanted to kind of do some deep diving with, obviously, my personal interest of skill on the bike. But basically, I mean, in a nutshell, what you'll see is you have a certain threshold to be able to, well, first of all, to learn a skill, you have to do the skill correctly as much as possible. But at some point, neural fatigue, or if not outright muscular and or metabolic fatigue, depending on what skill we're talking about, start getting in the way of doing it properly. So let's say you have a threshold of you can do quality reps for an hour, but you decide to practice 3 hours. Well, that means you're getting 2 hours of garbage reps in, and you're probably making a deeper ingrain of that technique into your motor pattern than the technique you did then, not only by volume, but also by what your brain is going to last remember, because that's what you end the session on. So there's a good reason not to do that. You can build bad habits in there, and as we know, once you ingrain an incorrect manner of doing something, it's much harder to undo it than it is to learn fresh in the first place.
Yep, that's a very good point that you make there, Scott. Is that one of the ways that people kind of shoot themselves in the foot is that they do so many reps. If the reps that you're doing aren't the correct reps, you might be ingraining something that's not correct. So by
Exactly.
doing multiple sessions, you have more chance of doing the correct thing, and then doing some time on that, and then not fatiguing, not throwing, any monkey wrenches in, and then just letting it go, picking it back up, and then you're kind of aware right away, like, am I doing this correctly? Or what can I do to improve whatever this is?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think taking enough time to reflect after attempts
Mm.
or sets or goes or whatever it is. Like a lot of people will try a skill, whatever skill it is, and you do it wrong, and you
Yep.
just immediately try again. Maybe you're frustrated, like, no, I'm going to get this. Well, did you actually stop to think what went wrong on that last attempt? Or are you just going to throw yourself back at it? Um, while possibly things where it's simply determination, it's a certain amount of effort, right? Like jumping on a high box, right?
Yeah.
Well, it's that maybe works, but for most things that have any component of skill to it, it actually isn't really the best way. And again, I certainly know I've learned skills incorrectly, and I've made those mistakes a lot, and some of them are deep. I have things on the bike that I learned 30 years ago, and I still struggle with them. I'm still bad at them. I could do them, but I revert to my bad habits because I practiced them so much for so long because I didn't take the time to do correct reps early on, and it lingers. It's extremely hard to undo.
Yeah.
So
So it's better off not to learn it incorrectly
staying
in the
within your
first place.
window of quality.
Yes.
That's basically what I'm saying. Yeah, and frequent but small doses, and try to
Yeah.
end on a good note. Like a lot of times people will work. Like I mentioned, you're going to have a more. What you do at the end is going to be remembered more here.
Yep.
So if you always end when you're tailing off and your reps aren't that good, maybe that's not the best thing. Maybe you should end with a great rep, which is
Yes.
something I try to do in the gym and bike and everywhere else. I try to end with a good rep. There's times it won't happen, right? We can't predict when the fall off happens, but the more you can do that, the more chance you'll have of ingraining good technique or whatever new technique you're trying to implement into your exercises.
Yes. Yeah. So, I mean, you're absolutely right. And it's important enough for me to kind of reevaluate and look at that so that I can do it more often than not, because I have a tendency of beating something to death and almost driving myself insane. But then it's not until I actually stop, take a second, like maybe even like not a second, I wish it was just a second, but like take an afternoon or a couple days, and then I pick it back up. I'm like, okay, like this is what I was doing completely wrong the entire time. So it's not when we obsess over it that we start to get improvement. It's when we let go that we get the improvement.
Exactly. You'll often find a skill that you'll leave it alone for a few days after doing a period of time of practicing it, and then you leave it alone for a bit. And
Yes.
It's very much like our strength, right? If you were going to try to PR your back squat, you would probably peak, right? And then you take a little bit of time. You deload, you lift light, and allows the nervous system to fully recover and regenerate, and then you can express your true strength, you want to ramp. But it's actually the same with skills to a degree as well. Work on something for a bunch, taper off, leave it alone for a little bit, come back, and your performance will probably be much better.
Yes.
Yeah, and another, I think one more thing that is important for skill practice, and like in particular handstands, for balancing freestanding handstands is one place that I really saw this. Is you also have to be patient enough and willing enough to just let things go for the day, or do more. Like there'll be days, you plan to work on it that day, and you can tell you're not at your normal. Like if you're not able to get to the balance point as often, and when you get there, you're having trouble balancing. Instead of just being frustrated and trying over and over and over and ingraining bad technique because for whatever reason you're off on it that day, just cut it. Don't do it that day. Leave it alone. Do it the next day. But on the other hand, there will be those days when, whoa, it's really clicking. Well, maybe you should do a little more work and ride it while the pot is hot.
Yep.
And get some more reps in that day.
And have the courage to actually press it a little bit. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, this is not something you've ever done before, but hey, when are you going to do it? You know what I mean? Like, if not now, then when?
Yeah. Yeah, I had that this week on the bike. I went out and a thing I wasn't even really planning to try to do. I had an idea of earlier, and I sort of let it go. And the trick I do it out of was just really dialed, like better than ever. And I was feeling kind of snappy and aggressive, like I wanted to commit to something. And I was only planning to do like a quick 20-minute session on my way home. And I'm like, no, now's the time. I got to do it. So I ended up going for like a full hour and being a little late getting home, but
Yeah.
So
That's how you got to do it, though, sometimes. My problem is that I won't tell anybody that I'm doing that. I'm like, oh, I'll be there in 10 minutes. And then an hour and a half later, I'm like, yeah, like, just tell them.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, it's a whole discussion of how we really do learn and what the best strategies of learning are. And, another thing that comes up for me personally is the idea that, like, when you are going to do something, where is this coming from? Is this coming from an egoic place of, I have to do this to prove myself, or get some kind of sense of I'm enoughness, or I deserve love? Or is this from a place of, I am certain that I am okay, and I'm doing this because I love to do it? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And you're going to find it's funny that when you actually excel, you are in one of those states of, like, I'm doing this because I love to do it.
Yeah. No, yeah, that's a good point. That's, like that particular day I got it, and I was like, yes, this is, because this is that's exactly my essence. It's what I've done for 35 plus years. And like, there's still an amazing feeling of, finding a challenge. It means nothing to anyone, right? Even I'll forget it in a few years. But to just get it done for that moment, that day, is just a great feeling.
Yeah, man. It's pretty cool stuff. So, Scott, I'm putting you on the spot here. When are you going to be doing your first workshop?
First workshop in a while, I guess.
Yeah, in a while. I know you have done in the past, and that's actually one of the ways that I found you. But when's your next workshop, Scott? What's your idea? What are you up to?
Yeah, well, I should have some actual concrete answers for you pretty soon. We're doing something that we've always talked about doing but never really done. My wife and I are doing a working sort of vacation. Not this coming week. Projects are going to be. I mean, I enjoy it. I need to, we need to sit down and really figure out what's going to be, what we want our focus to be, right? Yeah. So
we'll see. So
I'll have an answer for you fairly soon.
It's in your consciousness. Yeah. It's just a matter of pulling the trigger.
Oh yeah.
And making it something that's going to be worthwhile.
Yeah, exactly. Something that you can feel good and passionate about doing. And,
last thing you want is to put something out there that you're like kind of half into.
Exactly. Yeah, that's difficult.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Well, I know you're on a bit of a time crunch today, Scott, so I'm going to cut it there. I thought we did some good little things here, and hopefully we'll have more things to come as your next workshop is starting to iron out. But this is the Fitness, Wellness, and Longevity Podcast. Please subscribe. Please review it. Share it with your friends and family members if you find it worthwhile. Scott, you got anything else for today?
I think that'll do it for today.
Okay, beautiful. Well, I'm Sean LaFloch. You can get me at Sean at CrossFit.beach.com. Scott
Hagness at CrossFitPortland.com. Scott at CrossFitPortland.com if you email.
Ah, beautiful.
All right.
All right, Scotty. I'll talk to you next time, brother.
All right. Take care.